This is for me to smack you if you don't ask questions.
Dennis is not going to, or Alex is not going to smack you. Come on now, come on. We have a good half hour for questions. This is fabulous. And listen, I'm going to. So the work that Gene and Darren and Dennis, there's more than 100 people have contributed to what you heard about this morning. So I just want to acknowledge that. Okay, the floor is open for questions. This is your time.
I saw on one of the slides.
Would you be so kind, just identify your name and affiliation, please?
Okay, yeah, sorry. Stan Brubaker. I'm here representing the OPC Foundation, and my company is Beyond. I saw a slide up there that showed the process, and certification was part of that process. I just would like to know about OPAF, what the plans are for certification, because in my view, to make things interoperable, the different solutions need to be certified according to the standards so that, in fact, they do work as defined, as specified. So I'd like to hear, is there a certification?
We're certainly going to leverage existing, certainly the standards owners. Who wants to comment on that?
I do, and so certification obviously is going to be a big piece of this, 100% certification, and we have a conformance committee set up that's going to work on the policy and all the details of that. So without getting into too much of that detail, it's absolutely going to be the underpinnings of how we're going to make the standards stick and how we make them work.
Join us.
Okay.
Come sign up, join the team. We need volunteers that have experience in that area. And
so I invite the open group guys to comment. I mean, the way that a standard of standards works is where the owning organization of the standard that we're bundling up, it has a certification process. We would use that. I mean, that's the basic principle. Okay. There was a question in the back.
There was back corner. I can get
on my way. It's a mind trap.
Stan DeVries at Schneider Electric. My question is related to the previous one. It sounds like if certification is a key part of it, there would be a working group or something equivalent to flesh that out?
Well, go ahead.
There is.
Yeah, there is. So under the overall business working group, there is a conformance certification head by Luis Duran. So we've kicked that off probably about right at the end of last year.
Yeah, but I want to clarify that we're not talking certification, we're talking conformance, basically checking of conformance, and it is the business working group that's doing that right now. Yeah.
Here's Ira Baxter, Semantic Designs. The conformance question is really a hard one, okay, especially if your goal is to hit 100% conformance. Okay, it's very difficult to build tests, at least for software. I don't know about hardware. Okay, to achieve those kinds of levels. How is this going to happen?
Luis is going to handle it.
Yeah.
Well, I can actually hit part of it. We have achieved tests in Unix, FACE, POSIX, other interface standards that the open group's been involved in that our test suites actually test for 100% conformance to the standard. In FACE, it was the major end users building the test suite that was based on our POSIX test suite that built the FACE conformance test suites and have provided it to the members and suppliers. Unix test suites and POSIX, yes, the open group built them. Other certifications we've done over the years, they've been built by members, test houses.
This is going to be a set of standards, and they're all going to achieve this 100% conformance. That's what I worry about, right?
Let me try to answer, the preamble of the answer is we're just starting the conformance subcommittee activities. The goal of this subcommittee under the business working group is to create first a conformance policy. Obviously, this is a standard of standards, and some of the standards that are already in place, they have some basic criteria to demonstrate compliance to those specific standards. the idea is not to recreate those requirements, but to rely on those requirements as they exist. So we're starting with the policy. What is it that we're going to rely on? Number two, we need to define the kind of the testing requirements criteria. What is it that we need to do in addition to what is already in place to demonstrate that the products are conformant to the specifications that are going to be produced by the technical working group? So over the course of the next few months, because we have a timeline as you saw before, we need to, number one, complete the policy, set up the requirements. The forum needs to cooperate, the technical working group, the enterprise architecture working group, to create the specifics of what is to be done, and then who's going to do it in terms of, do we need third-party testing and so on. So all of those details and the questions that have been asked that are very valid are being worked on as we speak. So engage.
So Ira,
And we look forward to your participation in Luis's group, because clearly it's an area of interest and we need your support. So please sign up.
I was a
I want
member.
to chime in. So just be clear, I mean, we're really talking about conformance in terms of, the interfaces and the data models, not the performance of a component itself. So just to give an example that I can speak about with firsthand knowledge, I mean, there isn't going to be a reference mathematical problem for some nonlinear program that's got to solve in a certain number of time to a certain degree of tolerance. That is not, there will be no conformance to performance standards of that nature, okay? These will be testable standards.
Hello, Andrea Hewells, Omron Automation. This is my first time at the forum, and I just learned about OPAF 2 days ago. So this question might be a little simplistic, but it sounds like an awesome goal to interoperability, availability, portability, and so forth, and I'm all on board. But I was just wondering, I wanted to get your feedback from a supplier perspective. If you can plug and play any supplier's products, easily exchange them, then how do I create value for you in the marketplace other than the price lever, right? So what's important to you if our products are all exchangeable?
Well, I mean, if you go back and look at the benefits.
May I
Go ahead,
answer
Alex.
that?
Go ahead. Sure.
Because I am a supplier.
Alex is a supplier, well qualified.
And there is no doubt that this is a disruptive thing. But what it's really doing, that the clients are saying is, I don't want to worry about the cost of integration going forward. I don't want that to be a differentiator. So what does the DCS supplier sell today? We sell an integrated solution to a problem. What they're saying to us is, we want all of you to play together to create integrated solutions to a problem so that you can devote your resources to differentiation based on functionality that brings me value. The integration work, I want to be the norm. Just like I expect to get a certain % of oxygen in my atmosphere, I want to have integration work no longer be a point of interest and discussion. What I want to concentrate on is the value delivered by additional functionality. And at that level, I expect you guys to fight it out tooth and nail and come up with the best solutions for functionality that brings me value. Did I get it right?
Thanks. You spoke the truth, Alex. I mean, that's fantastic. Listen, Andrea, my take is we want to enable the suppliers to move towards the higher margin parts of your business and shed the low margin ones that, if you look, there's a line item on the benefits to suppliers, eliminate non-differentiated products. Every one of today's suppliers has to make stuff that's their specific version of it that is completely undifferentiated to we buyers. Why?
Because you wanted an integrated solution, and the only way we could do it at the time was to build the whole thing ourselves.
At the time.
Dick Stetson here with Lamliston Holdings. I'd like to answer that question as a consumer. I don't think any of the reasons that I have for selecting the partners I select change. I've always said that these systems, the PLCs, things like that, are only as good as the people that are behind them. That doesn't change. In fact, I feel like the partners that fully embrace this and increase my capabilities to utilize their products with someone else's and plug and play things that I haven't been able to do before is going to give you a competitive edge when you come to talk to us about becoming our partner. So those support issues, the training issues that I have, maintainability after I've installed a system, those things all still matter, and I think they matter all the more when I know that I can plug and play disparate systems in, things that I haven't looked at before, and have a reasonable expectation for them to work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Jose Rivera. I'm the CEO of the Association of Control System Integrators, and we have been involved in this project reviewing the chapter for system integrators. And the value we see from the system integrators' perspective is that by moving to a more standard array of components and subsystems, the value that system integration can provide can move from just overcoming technical hurdles and moving more to solving real problems from our customers.
It's going to be an interesting experience.
Coming to you.
Hi, I'm Joseph Helbatimi from Horizon Controls Group. Would I be on point to say, to make an analogy between this and, let's say, the Android operating system and deployment of that on hardware that, let's look at the current state of Android, right? So we have an ecosystem of hardware providers that all put Android in their system. We have an ecosystem of software developers that all play with Android. But even though Android has taken a huge market share, we still have iOS and Apple, right, holding fast with their more closed, all-inclusive proprietary system. So, I mean, if you have put any stake in the comparison between the industries, right, then you could say that there is a place for Apple and iOS and Android to play together and coexist. Does that sound
That's a great question.
at all on point? Or?
It's a great question. We use the cell phone analogy a lot. I don't know, Jeff, Steve, Dennis, do you guys want to have a go at that?
Yeah, yeah, we use the analogy quite a bit. I mean, the concept's basically the same. I mean, we have an application market, okay? So people install apps on their cell phone all the time. People who develop that right now, they develop it for two different environments if they really want to sell it in those cases. We here are looking at it on the Android side, obviously, because what we want is an open system. The DCP, our platform, is the equivalent of a cell phone with some environment. There'll be different profiles of those platforms with different functionalities defined that you would check against. But yes, we've been using that analogy a lot, and I'm glad you see it.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and add, this is Steve Bitar. That's a wonderful analogy, and we use that a lot to help understand where we come from, where we're going. In the future we envision, it is entirely possible that you could purchase a single function sealed appliance like an iPhone, and as long as it has the connectivity framework to integrate into the system, and you want to buy that and you're comfortable with buying that as an integrated solution, buy it. The next level would be abstracting, say, the hardware from the software, and that would be more like the Android solution where you can interchange the hardware platform. We have it in our minds that we would even like to think about going a step further, where we can abstract the software applications, the operating system, and the hardware. So all three have abstraction layers such that they could be interchangeable, and that would be the best of all possible worlds. We think for everyone to remove barriers to innovation and promote marketplace competition. But you can purchase anything you want. Right? We're not going to specify one tightly constrained model such that you can only buy this one component with these characteristics.
Tegan Merrickman here with ConocoPhillips. I think this goes to what you were talking to, Gene. I don't remember exactly who presented this, but this was actually one of the notes that I wrote down that I wanted to take to the business discussion. And that was, on one of the slides, it said that an area expected that the market was going to take care of was the configuration, the application, and the system management interfaces. And I think that's kind of what we're speaking to here. The key there is maybe that's something one of the business I'm not exactly sure which subcommittee that would be, but it's incentivizing that marketplace to take off with that. There may need to be some discussion on that to encourage the development in that space. Just the question is, has that been brought up and has there been discussion around that?
Well, sure. Yeah. I think that slide actually came from Dennis, the piece with the system management, configuration management piece. So that's actually one of the areas where I did talk about new revenue streams, new business models coming up. That's going to be a big piece of open process automation. And we encourage folks to the current players in the ecosystem to examine what's in the future state and what the opportunities are, the new revenue models, because that's certainly going to be a place that the end users will need.
So we're currently working on, there's a system management subcommittee, and it's dealing with, or will eventually deal with, everything from deployment of software through updates to monitoring the equipment status, monitoring the status of the applications and all that. And what we want to do is define interfaces that somebody can build software upon to implement that functionality. And then if you build it to those interfaces and those interfaces are implemented across the board, you can sell to anybody. You can actually have a group of competitive companies selling system management software because we provided a standard interface.
And just to comment to you, speaking to the Omron and the others that in the space that have been here for a while, it may be a little bit more clear to them. But just explicitly stating that may actually help answer some of that question, because that's, I think, where you're going to be able to create your competitive advantage and then make your profits.
I mean, if you have a great system management tool that you use on your system, if you could make it work with the APIs that the interfaces we plan to specify, you may have a product you can roll out across any vendor's control system. That could open up a much larger market than the one you currently have. Oh, you got it.
Hey, good morning. Brian Clemens, Dow Chemical. As we look at this system and we talk about management configuration, I begin to think about the resources to support, to implement. I don't know how everyone else is doing, but I don't believe we all have a fully staffed control and automation group. We're struggling to identify those resources. In this management and configuration process, do you see the opportunity to free up some resources that are now working in these other areas, integration, for example?
I'll take a crack at it. And actually, I've been thinking along the same lines as an end user. And the benefits we see is the convergence, again, of the operational technologies to the IT world, and using the IT, the vast resources and the standardization that's already there in place in the IT world, bringing those resources to bear to help us manage the systems more in the sense of an IT system.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that to say that what we're trying to do is a system management interface. We need to make sure we design that in such a way that it allows vendors to create these tools that will provide you the ability to automate or at least assist in that much more than and in a unified way.
Let me add another perspective. So what we envision in ExxonMobil is that we'll be able to design systems that are more fit for purpose for the manufacturing asset that you put them in. So we do not envision a situation where every site is going to be a new project and a mix of different components laid out in a different topology. We will have preferred standards for certain classes of manufacturing assets. And that, we believe, is going to give us a lot of efficiency, plus the ability to evolve and adapt those systems to incorporate improved technology compared to what we have today.
Well, if I could just comment on this, Julie Smith with DuPont for another end user perspective. Part of the staffing problem we have today is that there's no standard. right? There's so many systems that we need to know how to interact with that it becomes difficult to have people that can program and that can troubleshoot and make improvements in all these systems. You know, a simple example, the PID controller, you know, fundamental building block of control in the process industries. If I've got 5 different control systems, they all call the output something different. Why? And to the suppliers, I bet your competitive advantage really isn't that you picked .op as to call the output of the controller, right? It's just what you happen to pick at the time. But I've got to know all 5 of those, and I've got to be able to translate. That's really hard. So if we had a standard, we can work together to say, well, how can we do better with this PID controller so I can dump that part of my brain that knows all 5 of those different nomenclature parts.
I'd really like to add to what Julie just said. When I started in the industry in 1981, every EPC had a fully staffed DCS department, and they executed projects with their own people. And we as a supplier supplied equipment and provided some consulting, but for the most part, we didn't do the work. The EPCs did the work. Over time, they got fed up with trying to keep up with the changes in 5 or 6 or 3 or however many they chose to try and support, and they kicked the whole business out back to the suppliers and to independent system integrators and said, you guys deal with it, I'm going to contract with you. So they didn't have to maintain their labs, they didn't have to keep training their people, they just threw that work out. And as a result, many of the DCS vendors built large staffs for delivery of systems to the field. What happens if everybody adopts a common standard and a common set of tools that work the same way? Then there's no reason why the guy letting the contract wouldn't do the work himself, because he only needs to train people on one thing. There's going to be big changes because of this. I mean, they're not necessarily bad changes, but they're going to be changes in how we approach problems, how we're going to address business. And I know from everybody I talk to that's working on this, we want to drive the man hours out. We certainly won't want to drive man hours into the cost of delivery. We want to drive them out. Go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Michael Clark with Bus Corp, and I've been traveling the world to work with the end user community, and if you would permit, I would like the dog pile on this conversation because it's a good one. To my friends in the back here that have already talked about, you know, dumping that part of their brain, can I just drill down even one layer deeper? Device replacement strategies. When you get into a situation where you've got an instrument that has functionally failed or needs to be repaired, I'm watching without drawing attention to any specific vendor, I'm watching device replacement libraries being accessed and people having difficulty understanding which template is to be applied to a particular instrument that's now being swapped out for a newer version. Amen to the effort that's going on here, because that's going to eliminate it.
Thanks, Mike. Abdullah?
Abdullah Al-Khalifa, Saudi Aramco. My question is basically around the skill set, the expectation that we look forward or we anticipate from system integrator or vendors to build such system. Probably the business model that we follow in Saudi Arabia, we rely 100% on the automation vendor himself to be the system integrator. Maybe this is not the model that you follow here. You rely, or you have enough knowledge within the system, local system integrator to do such job. Are we anticipating that we will be relying, because it seems that this opens the opportunity for system integrator to do more and participate more and get involved more. Yeah. However, probably in some part of the world, the skill set, the knowledge, the experience that the system integrators, they don't have it yet. So would there be any effort to invest on educating system integrator? In other words, the general awareness and the education required to ensure that you have enough resources to support your project. Is this something that need to be considered part of this excellent effort?
Quick yes. And I'll invite, I don't know, Trevor or Jeff, do you want to comment on that? And actually, I'm going to invite Jose to comment on it as well. So.
Yeah, I think what the system integrator needs to bring is domain knowledge, and that's what the suppliers have today in terms of knowing how to implement control systems. And there definitely has to be some interaction for the system integrators to get that domain knowledge. I'm not sure how that's going to happen yet, but we do need to address that.
So from the control system side of things, we are CSIA, we're the largest system integrator association, and we wanted to take a proactive stance to it, and this is why we engage in an alliance forum with the OPAF. We want our system integrators, number one, to see the opportunity, and work towards it. I also believe that there will be a need to try to differentiate the good from the bad. Our association has a certification program. This is at the business side of things. And I think that we can work together to get to a point where end users are comfortable with the selection of the system integrator they're taking. And I will just mention that system integrators are not just mom and pop shops. We have a lot of system integrators that are multi-million-dollar companies, around the world. And I think that trend will continue because more and more end users are pushing and looking for the system integrators to deliver the work.
And Abdullah, I would say one other attribute that we see from our perspective is by exposing the interfaces to as standards and open, you'll increase the ability of integrators to learn how the system works together, as opposed to today's market where the internals are proprietary. So the vendor keeps that knowledge, okay, within their own shop. This is an opening up by making the knowledge more accessible. That's a vision that we have for the future state. Hi, Bill.
I should be on. Oh, okay, sorry. Bill Leyden, Automation.com, part of the International Society of Automation. It wasn't stressed so much here, but in light of past presentations about the experiences using FACE and OpenVPX in particular, have you been analyzing and what are your expectations for total cost savings? And that would obviously be on a life cycle basis for bending that curve, which they had done dramatically.
Well, so we've got internal metrics. I'm going to have a go at that. I mean, one thing I can say kind of semi-quantitatively in the future state, we envision the end of these massively expensive replacement projects that we have to go through episodically right now. And it's going to give us the ability to upgrade on a more continual basis when there's a positive ROI to do so. I realize that's not a quantitative answer, but that's certainly something that's easy for us to articulate, and that is not, our management, has accepted that, as a basis. Now, the other aspects of the total cost model, I'm not going to comment on at this point. I don't know if anybody else wants to have a go at that.
Yeah, we're not allowed to talk about cost.
Yeah. Okay, we're almost out of time.
Hello.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Well, but so as Kenny Warren said on Tuesday morning, I mean, we're moving to the next milestone up on the commercialization ladder. We're going to expand the experience base, and we'll see what users experience as they prototype forward. I mean, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Darren.
I'm sorry, I didn't know. Go ahead. I was going to say, what I want to add to that is, we did address it, fairly generically in the business guide. We do anticipate that when you look at it from a total cost of ownership or total life cycle cost, there should be improvement. And if you look back to the two examples I've provided on one slide with software-defined networking and face, in both instances, there were long-term cost savings. We can't prove that at the moment, but that's our expectation in the future.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to add, I think, Bill, what we can say is there are two sides of this equation. There's the cost side, there's the revenue value generation side. On the cost side, all we can say is that looking at history, whenever you improve marketplace competition, you get advantages of cost, better vendor responsiveness, you get more innovation. I mean, that's the greatest extent we can go saying today. On the value side of the proposition, the idea is that we have systems today that are sealed, closed, walled gardens. And there may be great ideas out there, but we cannot drop them into our system. And the second problem is no one is motivated to write or develop anything because the market share they can write into is specific to that generation of that system for that particular walled garden. And the general principle is when you open up those walled gardens, people will be motivated because the market share they can sell into will grow. Great ideas will have pathways to our doorsteps, and that'll all add in to the innovation side, along with companies that have that innovative talent within, that have barriers to innovation because they don't have the development tools they would like.
Yeah.
Excuse me, just before we go on to a new question.
My job as section chair. Okay, this is the last comment.
Just a comment before we go on to the next question.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
For those of us that have gray hair, not as much as you guys, but go back to... Thank you. Some of us have hair. Quickly, I apologize. I've got a couple of examples to this gentleman's question. If we were to go back in history and look at some of, and I can speak to this because I don't work for them, go to your Fisher Provox days, go to your TDC 2000 days, go to Bailey Net 90, Infi 90. When we started to migrate away from those systems, find companies that have done that. Find companies that have had the life cycle of their facility go through a migration and ask them what was their cost per IO to actually move from that platform to another platform and watch the tears flow.
Yeah. I'm Bala from Reliance Industries. This is more from the safety concern that is emanating from diluting the so-called single point accountability when you bring in the interchangeability and interoperability between the components. I mean, the psychic factor of the owner-operator, particularly running a nuclear plant or complex petrochemical operations, is there, if in case of an Android phone reboots, you can simply reboot, it's okay. I mean, whereas in case of a DCS, there is a malfunction. There's a psychic factor. I mean, it's maybe they are sitting in the comfort zone, the fear factor is there. Maybe some of the supplier side, they may take advantage of this fear factor and continue to be in the proprietary domain. Yeah. So as a forum, what are we going to do consciously to convert the psychic factor to move towards this without too much worrying about the safety outplay out there, safety concerns?
Paula, I'll just introduce the answer by, we have explicitly addressed the question of accountability for system performance in the business guide. I don't know, Gene or Darren, do you want to comment? Or maybe Dennis Stevens would like to. You guys want to have a go at it? I'm not going to speak to the psychic thing. I think that's only going to be solved with experience. But in terms of what the plan is, do you guys want to comment on the role of the systems integrator as the single point of accountability?
Yeah, I mean, if you remember the slide that was up from an ecosystem standpoint, right? The key to that was, right now, that tends to be all encompassed, right? We specifically said there are various roles different people will play, and it could be the same company playing multiple roles, but the idea is, whoever plays that system integrator role is likely to have that accountability. So are they going to, what are the different technologies they're bringing in? How do they fit together, and then how does that solve the overall problem? And there could be, whether an individual, end user uses one system integrator or multiples. I think there's various opportunities for that. But when you're bringing that total solution together, someone is pulling the sort of best in breed ideas so that they can deliver that solution to the market.
And just another
Go ahead,
quick
Jeff.
comment. So I think the analogy about the Android phone in this case doesn't quite fit, because there is no system. You're the system integrator in that scenario. You're taking an application, installing it on your phone, and effectively you're acting as a system integrator. So there's another layer that we're talking about in this scenario.
Okay, we have to stop here. We're out of time, okay? Thank you all very much.